There's nothing like Broadway, kid, nothing so grand, where each purple feather is perfectly found.
Hello and welcome to the Nothing Like Broadway podcast. I am David Rakoff, the writer and composer of Nothing Like Broadway, and this is a podcast where we pick a song from musical theater and then we pick it apart to find out how it works. So today this is a listener suggestion, which is exciting. So if you have a suggestion for a song for us to pick apart, email us at nothinglikeBroadway@gmail.com. If you can, give me a couple suggestions because, give me some choices. All right, so today we're talking about Words Fail from Dear Evan Hansen.
No, I'd rather pretend I'm something better than these broken parts. Pretend I'm something other than this mess that I am. Cause then I don't have to look at it and no one gets to look at it.
So first let's talk about the show, Dear Evan Hansen. I'm actually a big fan, but Dear Evan Hansen is a mean, cruel, cynical show for the most part. And that's why it's good. But make no mistake, if you misunderstand that, you will be bummed out, or the movie kind of misunderstood it. Like, the movie kind of thought it was this, inspirational thing or something, and it's not. It is very cruel, and it's like a horror movie where Evan is both the monster and the victim who we really care about. It's like he's the guy with a knife and the person running away from the guy with the knife. And that's why it's fun to watch, is because you're just like, what the hell is going to happen here? And do I feel, where are my sympathies in this? And so that's what's kind of exciting about it, is that it's a really emotionally complicated show. It's very involving. I saw it on Broadway several times with several different people, and I think it's terrific, but it is a very dark and cynical show. And as the show goes on, it reveals layers and layers of how much darker it is than we thought even at the beginning. Like the song that ends Act 1, You Will Be Found, which is often performed out of context, and it's inspiring, and the movie featured it very heavily in its advertising. You will be found, you will be found, and it ends Act 1 on like a hopeful note. But that song is really not like you will be found, like everyone's going to come and hug you. It's, no, you little lying piece of shit, you're going to get found out. And so in the context of the show, in retrospect, we realize, oh, you're going to be found. Like the guy with a knife is going to find the person who's running away from the guy with a knife. And you will have to face the consequences because you're going to be found out. It's an example of a really fun, clever thing about this show, but also evidence that it is a much darker show than I think a lot of people think going into it. And again, I think the movie sort of misunderstood this. All right, so the context of this song, first of all, it's almost at the end of the show. It's basically, this is the climax. He's been lying and lying and lying, causing all sorts of these sort of snowballing effects of social media, and he's becoming popular and feeling like he has a place in this. And this is right at the end of the show where all of his lies, he confesses all of his lies to the family of his alleged friend who committed suicide, who it turns out was not his friend at all. And it is just this breakdown song. It is this, and before this song, the role of Evan Hansen is incredibly difficult. It's really rangy, it's really emotional, it's really character-y. He has to do a ton of monologues and really sophisticated acting, and he's supposed to be in high school. It seems like they usually cast someone in their early 20s, just partly because it's such a hard role, and you might as well have somebody who has some college under their belt. If you find a 17-year-old who's great, give him a couple years in college, he's still going to look kind of the same. So it's such a demanding role, vocally and acting, that it is just hard, until this point where it gets 10 times harder. And this song is basically, it reminds me, for an actor, of at the end of Die Hard where he's barefoot and running through broken glass. That's kind of what this song is. This is like a gauntlet for him to run through after he's been singing his ass off, after he's been acting his ass off. All of a sudden he has to get really raw and do the hardest singing he's had to do all night. It's like Rose's Turn from Gypsy for a high school boy. And so it's incredibly rangy while being incredibly emotional. And it's also like a cry song, basically. And as a director, when you work with actors, there's really nothing worse than someone who just isn't getting to the crying place and trying to cry, and us watching the actor try to cry, or they're hiding their face or turning up stage. That's just terrible. My feeling as a director is hey, if you can't get there, don't get there. It's fine. There's a million different ways to show emotion and to express your feelings. Crying is just one of them. So if you can't cry, if it's a movie and you're doing it take after take after take, you probably will get there because that's one of the reasons that movie acting is sort of, I don't know, emotionally easier, because you can just finish a take. You didn't quite get to crying, do the take, do another take, and you just sort of keep building, and sooner or later you'll get one take where they cry. But with a stage show, you've got to do it 8 times a week at exactly 9:52 or whatever time it is, right? And so this song, unlike most songs, where it's just like, if you can't cry, don't cry. Just, there's a different way to express it. You kind of have to cry. And you don't want to be like covering your face, like it's blocked where he's downstage right, I think, facing stage left. So he's just open to the audience, and we're just witnessing this. And if your actor can't get there, like, I don't know what to tell you, because like you don't want to watch somebody trying to cry when they can't, but you also kind of need that for here. And this is a song where he basically has to cry, he has to sob. And that's such a hard thing that not everybody can do, and not everybody can do 8 times a week. And not everybody can do 8 times a week while singing this incredibly hard song. And it's the climax of the show. So if this song stinks, even if the rest of the show is good, it kind of makes the whole show kind of stink. All right, so now normally I would talk about the music separately from the words, separately from the vocal demands. I feel like this is a song where they're all tied together inextricably, which I think is great. Like, that's usually the sign of a really good piece of musical theater. Like, that's part of the craft. And that's why, like, the Tony Award is given to the best score, not lyrics and music separately, which I didn't used to understand, because I'm like, what if the lyrics are awesome, but the music isn't so good? But that's really not how it works. In musical theater, the lyrics and the music work together. And so if there is a problem with one of them, it might be a symptom of a problem with the other. And if they're good, it's because everything is firing on all cylinders. And that is the case in this song. So the first, 80% of the song are not very melodic. It's kind of meandering. It's like a monologue, which I don't know this for sure, but I bet you that Ben Platt, where they're doing all their workshopping and readings and everything, he probably discussed this with the book writers, and the book writers discussed it with the composers and the director, and everybody just kind of workshopped this. So I would imagine that this probably did start as some sort of brainstorming monologue between all the writers and Ben Platt. So the first, it really is it's 9 out of 12 pages in the sheet music, and it just sort of feels like it's one, I'm not even sure if it's in G or in E minor. It's really hard to tell where the center is. And I think that's the point, because he isn't someone who has he has been really, really calculated up to this point. Here, it's all just stream of consciousness, unmoored, sort of shapeless.
I never meant to make it such a mess. I never thought that it would go this far. So I just stand here, sorry, searching for something to say. Something to say.
And it's really hard to watch, because we don't have anything to hang our hats on. It's not beautiful singing. It's not even a story song in the first act that I love, For Forever. That's just a really well-crafted song, because it's a really well-crafted story, because he's making it up out of whole cloth. This is all of a sudden now, Evan Hansen is just, it's coming out however it's coming out. And that includes the snot coming out of his nose, and the words coming out of his face, and the notes too. It is very just wherever, and it's hard. As an audience person, you're sitting there, we're very aware that we're watching a show, and that we're watching an actor do something really hard and try to make sense of this. And it's you're very, very aware that you're sitting in a theater with 1,000 people, which is a strange feeling when this emotion is happening on the stage. And this is happening for about 6 or 7 minutes. And then, and this is where the song just reaches in and grabs at your guts, the song Waving Through a Window reprises. And it's a song that we remember from the first act. It's the catchiest, sort of golden, catchy, warm melody. It's our friend is coming home and embracing us. And that is where the audience kind of falls apart. Because all of a sudden now, all of his actor emotion-y stuff on stage that's meandering and shapeless, all of a sudden now this reprise of the song that we love and that we miss comes back, and we are just there for it. And we are crying, and we are now all of a sudden with him. And we're no longer self-conscious about being in an audience. We are now just with him. And it's a really great moment. It's a really, really great special theatrical moment. And it's exactly what you want when you're writing a show or when you're rehearsing a show, is you want a moment where the whole audience is just sucked in and surprised. It really is a sucker punch to the kidney emotionally, because you're just not expecting it. You're thinking okay, I get it. It's this meandering monologue. But then all of a sudden, this song that we love, that we remember, comes back in. And it also recontextualizes that song. This Waving Through a Window seems like an upbeat song. at the beginning, and it was not. We just sort of thought it was because it's so catchy and fun, and like, but we start with stars in our eyes, right? But it's the point of the reprise is that, no, we start with stars in our eyes, but that's not where it goes. It's a really dark song, like this show is a really dark show. Like, because at the time of Waving Through a Window in the first act, we think that Evan Hansen's arc is going to be like that he's going to become more confident and popular. Maybe he'll like invent something, or maybe he's gay and he's going to come out and people are going to accept him. It's like the broken... So, sorry, this is a spoiler. If you have not seen the show and you're planning on seeing it, skip ahead like a minute, because this is a big reveal. But in the poster, he has a broken arm, right? And from the very beginning of the show, he has a broken arm. And we just, it's like poor kid, poor puppy dog, high school kid, has a broken arm. But then we find out later in the show that he tried to kill himself too, and he jumped out of a tree, and that's how he broke his arm. Like the whole thing about like the stolen sympathy where he is pretending like he was friends with a kid who committed suicide, it's actually much more a part of Evan's story than we thought. And it makes everything much darker. The song Waving Through a Window is much darker. His broken arm is much darker. This character is much more damaged than we originally thought. And we keep sinking lower and lower and lower. And then that's when he's singing the Waving Through a Window, which all of a sudden has a little bit of a feel of like, okay, maybe this is going somewhere. And then he sings, I never let them see the worst, which is much higher than I just sang it. And it's a sustained, loud, showy, belted high, I think it's an A. Like a really high note in the middle of this thing where he's already been crying and screaming and shouting and singing for, 7 minutes, but prior to that for an hour and a half.
I never let them see the worst of me.
So he has this really high belted note, and then after that, which is like nice, because we haven't had like a big singing note for a while from him, so it's nice to have. And then he admits nakedly that everybody else hates him just like he hates himself. And there's no more subtext, there's no more layers, it's just laid out bare. And then he has this really high head voice note, which is kind of beautiful, but also it's really high. It's not like a regular high note. And it's really risky. Like as a singer, if you have a big belted note and you're not quite at 100%, you might be able to cover it or mix it or sing it in head voice. But a really high head voice note as a man, if you don't have it, it's just air and feathers are going to come out. Like there's nothing else. Like it's just you either have it or you don't. And after like screaming and belting really high, and crying, that is a really, really risky thing. And it's really high. Like I was actually shocked when I saw the sheet music. It's a B and a C. Like up high, a B and a C. That's like Pavarotti's high note kind of territory. That's the song Bring Him Home at the end when he goes up to his high head voice. This is a major third higher than that, which is really, really high. Like I can't think of another B and C head voice that a main character has in a musical anywhere. It's sort of shocking. It's like a landmine, basically. It's like the writers were like, all right, Evan Hansen actor, let's see if you can do this. Like this is the broken glass that I was talking about before, like in Die Hard.
All I ever do is run.
But it's also very exciting. When he does it, it's like, wow, that is really impressive. And also, it's a little bit, if you can do it, then you sort of know your voice is relaxed now, after all the shouting and screaming and belting. So once you get past that, it's smooth sailing for an actor, but that is such a landmine. Like, like I have it maybe 2 days out of the week, I could sing a B or a C in high head voice, but the other 5 days I could not. And I've honestly, like, if you look at clips of Words Fail, you can see that that's an area sometimes where people have a little trouble with it, because it's really hard. And then the song has a little bit talky, and then it ends in this sort of more comfortably placed normal head voice area that's really pretty. And then there is this beautiful violin outro that gives us like a little bit of like a soothing balm on top of all of our open wounds. And hinting that there might be some grace in store for this character and for the story and for us as an audience. In this really cynical, mean show, it gives us a little bit of redemption. And so then the last thing I want to talk about is the Ben Platt of it all. So Evan Hansen was workshopped, I think, for years. And like they had like a production in Washington, D.C., I think, with Ben Platt in it. And Ben Platt is a very, very special performer. This is one of those songs and roles where they really tailored it to a specific performer. And Ben Platt is a very specific, special performer. He has a huge range, He is really funny. He's a really good actor. But he's also can really, really just tug at your heartstrings. And he also has something called a tessitura, which is the part of your range that sounds good. So there are a lot of singers who have, like, they might have really high notes, but it doesn't sound that comfortable up there. Or like a tenor might have some low notes, but it just doesn't sound very good. It's just like, right? So when people say, like, oh, I have a 3-octave range, but maybe you only have an octave of that is like your tessitura, where it feels good. Ben Platt has a huge tessitura. Like, it sounds really great from the bottom to the top. Like, I saw him in Parade a couple years ago, which is a role written for a baritone. It was a revival, and they didn't change the keys or anything. He just sang the baritone part, and it sounded great. And not everybody has that. And so it sounds like not just that they tailored this part to his vocal and acting abilities, but they really, like, pushed right to the breaking point of his singing and his acting. So, like, they really, really, I mean, again, I'm just imputing these motives to these other people who I don't know what was going on inside their head, but it really sounds like they wanted to see, like they were like, okay, Ben Platt, you think you got this note? How about this higher note? You think you can cry? How about if you cry while you're saying this thing or singing this incredibly hard part? And it sounds like they really, really kept challenging him and also kept getting inspired by what he could do and wanting to see, like, where are the outer limits of what this kid can do? Even just, like, the words and phrases, it feels like they discussed it with him, the songwriters discussed it with Ben Platt, and with the book writer, and, like, saw what his, like, thoughts were about it and, like, what his trigger words, like, I've done that before. There's certain, when you're discussing something with an actor, when you're writing something, sometimes there's, like, a specific word that they'll bring up, or that's something that you didn't think was that big a deal in the script that just really gets under their skin in, like, a useful way. And so then you'll write more about that and you'll expand more about that to really, really help the actor, but also to really challenge them. Like, what are they comfortable with? What are they uncomfortable with? And vocally, like, if you have somebody who's a really good singer or who has a really big range, as a writer, you want to use all the notes that you got, you know? Like, you want to use all the colors on the palette sooner or later. And it seems like very much that's what they did with this song. Like, it's sort of a mean gift, but also an incredibly generous gift that a writer can give to an actor who they love. And that's what it sounds like this song is. It feels very much like they found Ben Platt, they pushed out everywhere they could to make it as dramatic, as difficult, but then cathartic once you do it successfully. But this is also why it's a hard role to cast. Oh, also, sorry, one thing. Please do not sing this song out of context. There's no way you're going to do justice to it if the audience hasn't also been with you sitting in this show for an hour and a half. Even if you do it well and are, like, sobbing and crying, it looks weird. Like, I've just noticed online when I was doing research for this podcast episode today, it's a rough look doing this song out of context. Like, it really is. The song works incredibly well in context. It does not work well out of context. It just looks very self-indulgent, or like you're just trying to get there, but you really can't. And even, like, if Ben Platt wanted to do this song out of context, I think it would look weird. So please follow us on Instagram at NothingLikeBroadway. And you can also email us, nothinglikeBroadway@gmail.com, if you have any thoughts or suggestions especially. Now let's take a listen to a little bit of Ben Platt singing some of Words Fail.
This mess that I am, 'cause then I don't have to look at it, and no one gets to look at it. No one can really see